Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan, Kanye, whoever, you fill in a blank. How can we find something that they're doing that's good and we celebrate the good when they're saying something right instead of saying, you're stupid, you're bad, you're an idiot.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? I'd like to welcome you back to the Real Talk with Zuby podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be having an amazing conversation with a good friend of mine. He is a Renaissance man, such as myself, a man of many talents, rapper, YouTuber, content creator, entrepreneur, businessman, family man. Without much further ado, it's Ruslan.
Hey, man, this is third time I think we're on each other's platforms.
Yeah, I think it's third
Something
time.
like that.
Third time.
Lost track. So
No doubt,
anyway,
man.
thank you for having me, bro.
No doubt, bro. Thank you for having me. We're in your studio.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah, man, I've had you on the show before. We've had conversations on your podcast as well. But for those who are not familiar with you, please introduce yourself.
I am a creative entrepreneur. I'm primarily, people probably know me for YouTube. I was making music full-time before that from 2015 to 2020 as a professional, full-time, independent Christian hip-hop artist. Before that, I worked at my church. Before that, I worked with adults with developmental disabilities. My foundation is a refugee from Azerbaijan, Baku. So came out here in the early 90s, got into hip-hop. That led to eventually getting saved and becoming a Christian. And then that got into music and YouTube, and I'm a husband, I'm a father of two. I love long walks on the beach.
No doubt, man. Well, dude, I think we first met in October 2019.
That's right, we had A3C.
Yeah, A3C in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It was my first time in the city. And yeah, that was a really interesting time. It doesn't feel like it was approaching 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
And a lot has happened in that time. I think, you know what? This is the fourth time, because the first time I was on your channel, we recorded in a hotel room in Atlanta.
That's
and
right.
I think you had somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000
10 to 15,000
subscribers
subs,
at the time. Yep. And you very recently hit 500,000.
500,000 on the main channel.
On the main channel? Congratulations,
yeah.
man.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's huge.
500,000 on the main, about 230,000 on the Blessed God Studios channel. And then our third channel is called Mastermind My Business.
Okay.
And it's all about business and mastering your business the master's way. And that channel is like right on the cusp of 10,000 subs. So that's actually my baby. Like, I like that one the most.
Now more than ever, the ability to see through the chaos of traditional news media is an absolute necessity. Biased narratives and selective reporting obstruct the informed, critical thinking that we should all be striving for. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News compiles stories from all across the political spectrum, globally and locally, giving you every angle so you get the full picture you need to stay ahead of rampant media bias. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the number of articles covering it and the political bias, ownership, and headlines of the sources reporting. One of my favorite features is their blind spot feed, where you can see stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum or the other. Ground News does a great job at helping me see behind the curtain of mainstream media. I highly recommend you give Ground News a try. My listeners can get 40% off their Vantage subscription, which gives you unlimited access to all of their incredible features. Go to ground.news/Zuby or click the link in the description to subscribe for just $5 a month. Check out Ground News today and stay informed. Our podcast today is sponsored by the Exit and Build Land Summit. I've been speaking out about the Great Reset for several years, and many people are especially concerned about so-called smart cities being pushed by the World Economic Forum. They're designed to watch everything you do, harvest your data, and regulate every part of your life. I'm an urban dweller myself, but I'm not interested in going through another lockdown, eating bugs, or living in a pod. No thanks. That's why friend of the show John Bush created the Exit and Build Land Summit back in 2021. It's helped tens of thousands of people around the world to exit cities and suburbs and build a better, freer life in the country. It's one of the largest gatherings of top homesteaders, permaculturists, and community builders in America. This year's summit will feature J.P. Sears, Joel Salatin, David Holmgren, and dozens of other world-class speakers. If you want to learn how to move to the country, raise healthy food and animals on a homestead, or create or join an intentional community, then you should check it out. The event is live May 17th to 19th, so sign up with a free pass, a virtual pass, or attend in person in Bastrop, Texas for an unforgettable experience. Go to exitandbuildlandsummit.com to sign up today. That's exitandbuildlandsummit.com. It's genuinely inspirational. I love the fact that we can think back to 2019 to where we both were with our careers and then being here now, early 2024. And the progress has been, man, I'm proud of us.
Yeah,
I
man.
think I can say that. I think I can say I'm proud of us.
You got to 1 million on X.
Yeah.
And a couple, I forgot how many subscribers, a couple 100,000.
Yeah, on YouTube, approaching a 250,000.
250,000 on
Approaching
YouTube,
250,000, yeah.
a couple 100,000 on Instagram. It's crazy. Like you think about the passage about, don't fret over the day of humble beginnings, and that you stay consistent long enough and things start to fall in place. I think most people just don't have the tenacity to stay consistent long enough.
It's difficult, man. It's difficult, especially when it feels like you're talking to nobody. I mean, it's funny because we're talking from 2019, but prior to that, I mean, we'd both been putting in work for well over a decade.
That's right.
Prior to 2019. And that's the stuff that most people don't see and never hear. And there's something weird about the fact that if I look at my audience, 99% of people who now know me would have discovered me in the past 5 years. And it's almost like the 11, 12, however many years prior to that kind of don't exist. And you would have had the same thing with your trajectory. Vast majority of people who are now familiar with you, they kind of see where you're at now, but they didn't see the entire journey. So I want to talk about that journey because I think it's important. And I think it's really important for entrepreneurs, business people, creatives to continue to tell the come up story. Because oftentimes people just see where you're at now and they're just like, oh, wow, 500,000 subs on this channel. Oh, wow, like he's just killing it. He just blew up out of nowhere. He just started this thing and, oh, wow, look at that. He's lucky. Look at his connections. Oh, he interviewed that guy. And you're just like, man, you have no idea how long this took and all the ups and downs.
You said connections. That was funny.
Yeah.
The connections part.
Dude, I get that all the time. I get that all the time. Like, oh, well, you're lucky. You're connected to Elon and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and this person and that person. I'm like, dude, I didn't know any of these people a few years ago. Right. I just kept putting out my signal day after day after day. And over the course of time, you get to know people one by one and the opportunities start to come. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that journey, man.
Yeah.
I don't know where you want to begin.
Oh, man. Well, I think in every business trajectory, you kind of go through these phases, right? And the first phase for me was like, am I even good? Right? Like, am I even good at this thing that I want to monetize, right? So for me, it was music initially. It's like, I want to monetize music. And then you go, okay, well, doing music when we started, 2006. Yeah. My first retail record came out in 2004.
Okay.
It's 20 years ago. It came out a month before I started dating my wife. Right. And so me and my wife will be together 20 years this July. My first project came out in the end of May 2004. And at that point, I think in the beginning, it's just, I like hip hop. I'm a man of faith now. I'm trying to reconcile those two things. I want to make stuff that people like. I want to be of utility to people, but at the same time, I want to follow my passion. And initially, I think you're just trying to figure out if you're good and just testing the waters. And I wasn't great, but I was above average at that point. And that was the get it in local bookstores, local music stores, sell it at shows, sell it to all my friends and family, make 1,000 CDs. Remember those days? Make 1,000 CDs.
I remember well.
Have 400 of them sitting in your trunk for the rest of your life. So I think initially it was that. And it was a lot of open mics, a lot of selling merch while working a full-time job and going to college and getting engaged and like all those things all at once.
What was your full-time job at the time?
At the time, I worked at an after-school program. Okay. So I did YMCA programs. I'm not sure if you guys had like a YMCA out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was a YMCA program, and then that evolved into a company called North County Lifeline, and I started out as just like an aide, and then I became the program director, if you will. So it went from like 15 hours a week, and I could still go to school, to like, oh, this is like a real job. Like, I'm the director now. It's 30 hours a week. I got to be there all the time. I got health insurance, and they were cool. They were allowing me to still do other stuff, But I had an opportunity presented as I'm about to get married. I had an opportunity presented to go work at a different YMCA. So I go YMCA, North County Lifeline, different YMCA that has a teen center, and the teen center had a studio. But this is 2000 and end of 2007 ish, and back then, like to have a studio, like a real studio with Pro Tools and the DJI 2 board and the whole bit, it was like a big deal. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to school for music. If I can get a job doing music and recording people professional, well, not semi-professional, it was like a real, we weren't on like a real console, but it was good enough. If I could do that and I could make some money doing something that's adjacent with my passion, which is making music, and I could do music for my day job, well, then I'll be pumped. So I make this lateral move to go work at the YMCA in Escondido, and then the '08 recession hits. So I go from like guaranteed 30, 35 hours a week to like cut those hours in half, 15 hours. And I just got married.
Okay.
Like I had just gotten married. So that was a very, 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 very scary time. And the music just wasn't really generating much at that point. I think I did my first out-of-state show. I did this show called Mix Masters Lounge in Charlotte, North Carolina's Christian television. That was the first time being flown out to go do a show, and it was crazy. And dude, 2008 recession, all the ways we were looking at making money for ourselves, whether it was playing at churches or playing at colleges, all those budgets are cut. No one wants to spend money on entertainment. That's the last thing that they care about, is like booking a band to go play for the youth group or booking a band for their lunch program, right? So all that money just stops. And so I'm freaking out at this point, and my hours are cut. So I start recording people. I start making beats. I start producing. I just do whatever I can to stay busy. I mean, I probably should have got a better job in hindsight. Go waited tables or something. And it was hard, man. Those first couple of years were hard, being a newlywed while trying to be a creative, while not making any money, while being in school still. It was terrible. And it culminated to this moment. Me and my wife were like, all right, we're going to try to figure out this money thing. So we discovered Dave Ramsey. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey. So we're like, all right, we're going to get out of debt. So we start this process of like cleaning up our debt. In the process, my mom, I had co-signed on a condo for my mom, which is like a terrible financial decision. She lets the condo go into foreclosure. She doesn't pay the HOAs. The foreclosure, I didn't think much of it because everybody was losing their homes around. This is the peak of the market in the United States. The HOAs sue me and come after me. And the letter comes in the mail, and my name is misspelled. And they're like, you need to appear at this court date. And I'm like, well, this isn't me. This isn't me. I'm not this guy. Who's, Caro Glanda Bo. I'm Caro Glanda. I'm Ruslan Caro Glanda. So I just blow it off.
Okay.
I just don't show up. I'm like, this ain't me. Yeah. No. Like, I know I'm not going to court for this $1,200 HOA bill that she stopped paying. Like, I don't live there anymore. It's not my problem. So they sue me. I don't go to court. They get a default judgment on me. They send me a letter saying, we got a default judgment on you. We're going to come and collect. Now, at this point, with all the fees, it's $5,000.
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, nah. Like, I'm not. No. So then one day, bro, maybe month 3 or 4 into us following this Dave Ramsey system, I'm now hustling, doing everything I can. This is like a couple years into our marriage. We have our own place. Like, we're starting to get off the ground. Thankfully, we had just paid rent.
Okay.
My wife calls me and she goes, hey, check our accounts. And I'm like, what? And she's like, check our accounts. All of our accounts are frozen.
Oh, man.
And I just called the bank and our accounts are levied. They sued me. They got a judgment and they they froze all my accounts. They took whatever little bit of emergency fund we had completely out. And thankfully, we had just paid rent and we had no money. Like, no money.
What year was this?
This is 2010.
Okay.
So I'm like, dude, this is crazy. So I go, all right, well, I'm going to have to deal with this. So I called them and I'm like, hey, can we settle on this $5,000? Can I make installments? And they're like, you can make installments, but we're not settling on this. Like, we're going to get this $5,000. We're not settling on this. We got a judgment. We have access here. So we had to create a separate account just in my wife's name for like years while we figured this out. Right. And then eventually that guy was added onto the account. It wasn't years. It was like a year after. So what happened was I then go and look at my credit. I pull my credit to see what else is on my credit, to see if this hit my credit. So sure enough, I see the foreclosure of that mortgage. I didn't realize there was another foreclosure of the second mortgage. Back then, they used to give people 2 mortgages, right? This is why the housing crisis happened. So that second mortgage, what I didn't know, was not foreclosed upon. That second mortgage was on my credit. So I got this $5,000 I owe. We owe like $20,000 in credit card student loans. We owe another like 10 in credit cards, another like 15 in car notes. And I found out I have another $60,000. 60 of a second mortgage that I'm liable for.
Wow.
So now we're like, dude, we're over $100K in debt. Like this is crazy. So I literally thought like, I'm gonna have to file for bankruptcy. I'm gonna put whatever assets I have, a little bit of money I have, put it in my wife's name. We're just gonna have to have an account just in her name. I'm gonna write over my checks that I make for my job, put it in her name, and I'm gonna have to file for bankruptcy. And that was probably like one of the scariest times.
Yeah.
And then what happened was, I did a feature sale. I'm not sure if you've ever done this as a rapper, but you could charge for features.
Sure.
So I threw up a thing, and I was like, hey, I've never done this before. And at this point, 2010, we put out a song a week.
Okay.
So we did a song a week for a whole year. And we would call it Remix Wednesdays. Whatever other popular songs were, you could request us to do our version of it.
Okay.
So we just flooded.
When you say we, do you mean?
Me and Belief, we were a group called The Breaks at this point.
Okay.
So we're just flooding SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever we can put music, we're just flooding. Every single week there's a remix. So I go, hey, I'm doing a feature sale. I've never done this before. If you want me to hop on your song, hit me up. I'm working with all budgets. Never done this before. Bro, yeah. I had made that 1 week I did a feature sale. I made $3,500 in 1 week.
Nice.
Which was crazy money to me back then. So I'm like, oh man, like, okay, now we have some food money. Now we got some other money, right? Because the next check wasn't until like the 15th or whatever. And it was the first time I really saw a pathway of like monetizing my art.
Gotcha.
Fast forward, we do a showcase. I sit my wife down. I say, hey, now the end of 2010, I sit my wife down. I go, hey, it's my birthday. My birthday's New Year's Eve. I go, hey, I don't want to be in the same place I am with music this time next year. So if next New Year's Eve, I'm in the same place with music, you got to tell me to stop.
Yeah.
I'm not going to keep spinning my wheels. So she goes, all right. So that year we did a song a week. We got sued. Accounts got levied. We put out 3 mixtapes, 2 retail projects. We showcased at NACA, which is the National Association for Campus Activities. We had 30 college shows booked at like $2,500 to $3,500 going into the following year. And my wife was like, you're crushing it. Like everything you said you were going to do, you were going to do, and you did it. Of course you got to keep making music. And so slowly that momentum kept building and we kept releasing music. And so fast forward 18 months from the start of our debt-free journey, we're completely debt-free.
Amazing.
We paid off all the debt except that $60,000. We ended up settling on that. Okay. I called him and I said, hey, I listened to Dave Ramsey and he was like, hey, this is how you settle debt. Tell him I got $1,000 with your name on it. So I called this company and I go, hey, I got $1,000. I got $1,000 with your name on it. And they go, okay, we'll get back to you. And they call me the next day. I'm like, okay, cool, we'll accept $1,000. For the $60,000 mortgage, they took $1,000.
Interesting.
Crazy, right?
Wow.
And thankfully it was like the last year, because how it used to work was like you have to pay income taxes on that or something. Something weird was happening in the tax code. So imagine like I got $59,000 in assets that would I would have freaked out. I couldn't have. So long story short, that was like the last year they stopped doing that because of the housing crisis, and so I didn't have to pay taxes on it, and so I settled that for $1,000, and we ended up paying off close to $50,000 in debt between student loans, car notes, everything. What that did is that decreased all of our income, all of our expenses. So now I don't got to make $5,000 a month to survive. Rent's $1,300, or it was at that point. We got food, we got gas, electricity. That's it. That's all we need. So now my overhead is down to almost nothing. My wife can come stay home, and that began the journey. And so in the middle of all that, I decided, okay, I'm kind of it's a side hustle at this point. It's not really generating enough money to sustain a family. Okay. So I paused and I go work at my church for 2 years. And instead of being a solopreneur, I became an intrapreneur. I said, I'm gonna go work within the church. Within the church, I have responsibilities. I learned media. I learned video editing. I learned how to make better videos. So now I can make music, but I can actually edit my own music videos. I can do my own live streams. I can understand lighting. I can understand these things. So I did that for 2 years. And then I finally quit my job. June 1st, 2015 was my first day as a full-time entrepreneur. Stay-at-home wife with a 1-year-old in Southern California as an independent Christian hip-hop artist. And there's a vlog of it up. So if anybody wants to go, Ruslan Day as a full-time rapper, 2015, June 1st. And so, yeah, man. And so it's going on 9 years. I've been self-employed.
That's awesome, man. Tell me about the role of your wife and the role of Christ throughout this time period.
Which one you want to do first?
Let's go wife first.
Wife. Okay, well,
Because this sounds stressful.
you know,
I'm not part of. I wasn't part of all this journey, and I'm like, man, this sounds stressful.
yeah, you met my wife, and we've hung out a little bit. I mean, she's so even keel and chill about everything. I think for us, we knew we had specific values, and we wanted her to be home when we had kids.
Okay.
And we were able to accomplish that. I think outside of that, something in her was confident enough in what I had already delivered. She wasn't blindly confident in my abilities to provide. No, like, you said you were going to do this, you did it. You said you were going to get us out of debt. We got out of debt. You said you were going to go make this much money off music. You did it. So there was like a confidence I had built up. So my wife just kind of kept like, she's not like, she's not like rah, 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 go do it. She's not like that. She's just more like, okay, like, if this is what you want to do, like, cool, like, let's do it, right? And so when I was working at my church, I could sense that they didn't like me being gone as much, because as a musician, you're traveling, you're doing shows. We would go do like a little 5-day run of shows. We'd go do this little run. So I remember March of 2015, we're at South by Southwest in Austin. And we rented we couldn't afford a tour bus. So we rent we'd go like find like a RV rental place and rent like a RV, and like that would be our tour bus for the week or whatever, right? Just so everyone could sleep on the bus. We could save money on hotel, or sleep on the RV, save money for the hotel. So that's the kind of stuff. So I remember driving back in this RV. We stopped in New Mexico. So we're just like halfway back from Austin, stop in New Mexico. And I just got the sense that it wasn't going well at work. Like, they couldn't have me do, because I'm thinking like, I'm starting to make money off of music. I'm gonna milk this entrepreneur thing as much as I can at my church, right? My heart wasn't in the right place, because I really wanted to do music, but I was scared to quit and fully transition. And so I remember calling her like, hey, like, I don't think it's gonna go well. Like, there had been a lot of transition. And so I told her, I said, I think when we come back, we should pray about me putting in my 2-week notice.
Okay.
And I remember this so vividly. I'm standing there. The guys were out front. They went and got ponchos, and they're like taking pictures. And I'm like at this like diner on the phone with her, and I'm watching them take pictures. And she goes, I don't think there's anything we need to pray about. I think you need to come home and put in your 2-week notice. And I go, whoa, like, here's my stay-at-home mom wife with, my son wasn't 1 yet. And she says, I don't think there's anything we need to pray about. I think you need to come and put in your 2-week notice. So at that moment in time, she had enough faith for both of us. She had enough courage for both of us. And so the role of faith in all of this is her seeing what God had already done and believing that he was going to continue doing, as long as we remain faithful to the process of, hey, we're going to really build a business. So it can't just be artsy-fartsy, chasing butterflies, doing dumb stuff. Like, we actually have to have products to sell, and we have to have a plan. And so, yeah, man. So like within that window, I came home, I put in my 2-week notice. They kept me for 2 months, which was like very frustrating. They're like, no, we're going to go after Easter. And I'm like, all right, Easter's like the Super Bowl. If you ever worked at a church, Easter's like the Super Bowl. So I put in that, and then, yeah, man. And so then it just became like a matter of like, if I'm doing the things that I'm generally good at, and I'm doing it because I generally want to help people, and there's a need for it in the marketplace, well, God's in that. God can bless that, right? Because people get real weird about passion, right? Because you can be like, follow your passion, but like, if you suck at your passion, don't follow your passion, right? So for me, like, I was generally good, and I was also, again, I'm going from solopreneur to intrapreneur in an organization. So now I'm really becoming like a creative entrepreneur. I'm running a business. I have a team. I'm doing stuff. And so fast forward, like within a year of me quitting my job, man, we ended up, my boutique label ends up doing a deal with Interscope.
Okay.
We did if you go to my Spotify, one of my biggest records is I Got the Juice. We recorded I Got the Juice on the same console that Kendrick did To Pimp a Butterfly on. This is around the same time that Dre did The Chronic on. Like, we were at Interscope in the same rooms with the same engineers, the same guy that is playing guitar. His name's Matt on King Kunta, Kendrick's album. Is the same guy that engineered some of our biggest songs.
Dope.
So within a year time, like we just got this like boom jolt, and Interscope is involved, and now like we're getting doors opening, and it was really cool to see it all. Now the flip side to all of that is when you're doing business in that industry and you're trying to remain a person of faith. That could be very difficult.
Tell me more about that.
Well, from a label standpoint, and people may be shocked to believe this, but the labels are primarily driven by capitalism, which is not a bad thing.
Sure.
If Christian stuff sells, sure, come on. Like we'll platform you. Like we got Kendrick and we got, you know, these guys over here, and the main artist that got the deal went through with my label King's Dream, but it was for my artist John Gibbs, and then 3 of us were a collective called the Dream Junkies.
Okay.
So the Dream Junkies stuff was like really starting to pop off. We're on Carson Daly, and they were like, yeah, like if you guys can get John to pop, like the world's your oyster, basically, because this is, you know, Kendrick got in, and they kept modeling us after TDE, which I don't know how much of that was smoke and how much of that they were serious about, but they were strictly, hey, whatever is selling and whatever is working, we're down for it. So if this Christian stuff is working, we don't care.
Sure.
Right? Same thing when we did some records with Atlantic and hung out with them. And I'm still friendly with Jeff Vaughn over there. I think he's moved on from Atlantic. Joey IE, who was over there at Interscope. They weren't concerned about like don't talk about Jesus. They're like, whatever you're doing that's working, we just want to throw a flame on that.
Got it.
The flip side to that is when you are hyper creative, when you are someone that has gone through stuff, which a lot of rappers unfortunately have, like we're coming from areas that probably didn't have fathers in the mix, or coming from areas where we witnessed stuff that maybe caused PTSD, or we're not emotionally mature enough, and you have that with immense access to money and an industry that doesn't really care about you from a soul standpoint, a lot of things can come apart. And that's basically what happened. Like unfortunately, our dynamic just wouldn't sustain itself. So I left that situation because I was like, hey, I'm not going to be the Christian guy that got to this point only to have like the thing that we're doing all of a sudden be compromised. And
so there were pressures coming towards you to make certain compromises in your values or faith, or
not. How do I explain this? Not towards me.
Okay.
My artist would be put in situations that weren't the most optimal for him.
Okay.
Then there would be conversations about who's worth what and why is this person involved, and this is the label and they're the big head honchos, but it's like, but yeah, we did all this groundwork to get to this place. So it's more of those like divisive conversations. And then when the practical allure of my artist, who was much younger at the time, to drift into substances and things that I just couldn't co-sign, there was no real like urgency to there's no real urgency to like, hey, let's get this dude back in church, and like it was like no. So at that point I checked out and I was like, I'm good. Like you go on, you do your thing. This isn't working for me. This is clearly our relationship isn't working for you. And that was hard because imagine you're getting to getting in the rooms, right? Like you're in those same environments, and now it's like, well, boom, you got to start all over again. And that's what happened. The 2017, like I had to start all over again.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear you say that, because a lot of people, including myself, you know, we hear all sorts of things about the music industry and these labels and these executives and whatever, kind of like with Hollywood. No one really knows, okay, what exactly is the truth? What is going on? How much stuff is just revenue driven or audience driven? How much stuff is, you know, demonic influence that's pushing people into this? Or, you know, you walk into some shadowy room, or you're going to some shady party and this is going on, that's going on. I'm sure you've heard a lot of the stuff about, you know, certain messages being pushed, not just in hip hop, but in other genres, because there's these shadowy forces and this and that. And people, I get asked about it a lot, but I've never really been in the music industry, even though I've been making music for a long time. From day one, I always did it totally independently. I never worked with any labels or management companies or whatever. So I always tell people, man, like, I don't know. I can talk about the music business, music itself, but in terms of what's going on in LA or New York and these giant major labels and stuff, I have no idea. Yep. I just hear stories. So I'm intrigued to learn more about what goes on behind those scenes.
I don't know what goes on behind all the scenes.
Yeah.
I know that at that time there was a moment, because remember, we're coming off of Pimp a Butterfly.
Yes.
So Pimp a Butterfly is Kendrick Lamar opening with the Lord's Prayer.
Yes.
Well, not the Lord's Prayer, the Sinner's Prayer. So the album opens and closes with him accepting Jesus. So there's this moment of, Chance is starting to explode. Chance the Rapper's starting to explode. So there's this moment of like, Lecrae is booming, and they're just looking like, hey, like if this is what people want, if people want more positive, uplifting stuff, like sure, like we'll find if we find some guys that have a proof of concept, and we'll put some money behind them, and let's see what happens. Now, from the label perspective, it's also I'm sure you've heard of this, right? It's like the 20% of the artists generate 80% of their returns. So they're okay with taking a loss here, a loss there, a loss, whatever. Like it's just, we're just throwing money around to see what sticks and what doesn't. And so I can't speak to everything that goes on in the music industry. I could only speak to the folks I interacted with. There didn't seem to be any sort of sinister agenda from them specifically. And to be fair, a lot of them also came from backgrounds of faith. Their grandma went to church, their auntie went to church, so-and-so in their family was church going. So like, yeah, like, and it felt like good, like, yeah, we can do something positive and help, you know. And so I think they were strictly being driven by analytics. And it's the same now, right? Like it's the same now. As I rebuilt in 2017, I started to like rebuild this label and try to rebuild my own. Because as I'm writing a label, I'm also not making my own music. So I'm hitting pause on my own stuff and not really working my own stuff. So as I started rebuilding, there's a couple artists that I signed, John Keith, Paul Russell, and Jet Trouble. And what happened was we got everything kind of off the ground again, right? Now these artists are starting to take off. They're starting to make money. They're starting to do shows. They're starting to put money in their pocket. And around the 2020, my YouTube took off. And as my YouTube took off, I just kind of like, I'm not going to run this label thing anymore. Like this isn't, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Gotcha.
Right? I'm already stretched pretty thin just running my YouTube. I don't need to have these artists that I'm also responsible for their livelihood. And so I just kind of sunsetted the label. In the process of that, Paul was like, hey, like, just want to make sure we're cool because like I'm really going to go in on this TikTok thing. So we did Paul Russell's first two albums, Once Upon a Time and Friends. Me and him did a joint album together called Friends. Some of my top songs on Spotify are from that. And Paul goes on, hacks away on TikTok, just hacks away TikTok, bro. All clean, all positive. And Paul finally, last summer, lands a record called Boo Thang. I don't know if you've heard this record. One of the biggest songs on TikTok last year. Lands a record, Boo Thang. They can't clear the master side of the sample. They sampled the Emotions, Best of My Love. And they couldn't clear the master side. They cleared the publishing side. For those folks that wonder, like there's the publishing, the people who write and compose the music, then there's who owns the recording. So they got the publishing side cleared, him and his new manager, but they couldn't get the master. So they ended up signing with a major label. They get the sample cleared like that.
Nice.
And so now Paul has a song called Boo Thang. It's going crazy. He just put out another song called Say Cheese. And I would say it's the same exact thing that we went through in that, except Paul is way mature and stable and comes from a 2-parent household and loves Jesus and all these things, that all the music's clean, all the music's positive. There's no killing, there's no profanity, there's no drugs. It's just fun, upbeat, feel-good music. It's not Christian.
Is that allowed?
I mean, it's, you know, his new song "Say Cheese" is one of the biggest songs right now. So awesome. He's on radio. He's everywhere. Like he is literally everywhere. He's in Europe right now doing stuff. So anyway, I think there's always going to be, hey, if you have something that's good and you have proof of concept, we have no problem with getting behind it and pushing it. Whether it's in the publishing world for books, whether it's in the podcast world, whether it's in the music industry, whether it's in the film industry. I mean, look at what's happening with Chosen right now. I don't know if you're keeping up with The Chosen, but they are, I think, are the first. Do you know what The Chosen is?
The TV show.
About Jesus.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, so they're on season 4, and they partnered with Lionsgate, and they, I believe, are going to be the first series where the full season is going to be in theaters spread out across multiple weeks. So episodes 1 through 3 just dropped last weekend and was the #2 box office.
Interesting.
And then they're dropping episodes 4 through 6, and then they're dropping episodes. So they're going theater, and then in the app, and then like mass market, like streamers, and they're crushing. You know, they're
That's
cleaning
interesting. I feel like for the entirety of our lives, and maybe far before we were even born, it seems that no matter the medium, it's a lot easier to sell negativity than to sell positivity.
Absolutely.
It's easier to sell degeneracy than anything that's wholesome. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a passage, I want to say it's in 1 John, where it talks about lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And I think the human heart is sick, and I think generally speaking is going to go towards depravity. I don't think we need a bunch of conditioning and an agenda and smoky rooms and a cabal.
Yeah.
I think we are wicked creatures, and we like to see train wrecks. We like to see gore. We like to see murder. We like to see these things. I think it goes all the way back to the fall. So I think anything that's going to be lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and pride of life is always going to cut through and be disruptive, right? So lust of the eyes, porn, sex, right? Anything related to that is always going to have a place, right? OnlyFans, right? Like all these things exploding is always going to have a place. It's always going to have prostitution, those things, right? Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh is pleasure, dopamine, right? Food. I mean, think about how sick Americans are right now, right? 70% of Americans are overweight, 40% are morbidly obese.
Yeah, we went viral talking about that last time.
Yeah, we got in trouble. We got in trouble, right? So you got America's drugs, lust of the flesh, right? So I want to feel good. I don't know how to naturally feel good. So let me add something inside of me to make me feel good, because I don't know that, I'm supposed to go outside and get sunlight and go on walks and like move. And so lust of the flesh. And then I think pride of life. Now, pride of life is a tricky one, because I think the pride of life is this thing inside of us to want status and want accolades and want to be right.
Yes.
I need to be right. And if I can't get the status, then I just need people to tell me that everyone else is crazy and I'm in the right. And I need to be reaffirmed of that over and over again. So think about the media that works. It's the media dunking on the other, usually, right? Yep. And there's a time and a place for that, for sure. There's a time and a place to expose and call out and all that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, everything is going to go back to those three things. So when you're trying to, hey, like, we want to sell people something helpful, hopeful, right? You got to figure out a way to slip the medicine in the candy. Like, you got to figure out a way from a marketing standpoint of like, how do we position this in a way that makes someone want to avoid pain or desire pleasure. It's something in there, and that's hard. It's hard to figure that out, especially when you're trying to do something wholesome. Yeah.
As a Christian entrepreneur, businessman, musician, YouTuber, do you ever find a struggle or a tension between the two things, between playing the game and making money to an extent and doing the marketing and selling and all of that, and then also sticking to your values and principles, morals? What are some of the challenges that you see there? What are some of the things that you've struggled with?
I think the temptation to feed the algorithm over and over. I think if you want to get popping as a Christian creator, as a Christian content creator, you're as fast as possible, you're probably going to do it on the back of dunking on celebrity pastors, megachurch pastors, or dunking on, oh my gosh, look at how crazy this lib is, right? Right. and again, there's a time and a place for that. Yeah. I'm not dismissing everyone that makes content like that. But I think the temptation and sometimes is to just keep repackaging that same video, because people want red meat.
It works.
And people want to be, they want to point out the other and feel like they're right.
Yes.
And I think that becomes a taste. So I had to make a very intentional effort to like, okay, we're not going to do any more like celebrity pastor call out videos. Okay. It's just unhelpful, right? Because I'd rather have conversations. I'd rather make videos that are net positive, meaning that instead of saying, this pastor's so stupid, look at him, he did X, Y, and Z. Hey, let's find something that could reel in a non-Christian. And how do we reel in a non-Christian? Well, we talk about something they care about. So if like we had a video that's doing well right now, it's Joe Rogan seeing that aliens are not extraterrestrial, that they're interdimensional, and that it's quoted in Ezekiel. So I juxtaposed Joe Rogan saying this to a video we just did of a different Christian saying, hey, aliens are not extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional, which means that the Bible is right, that they've always been here, and that they're not breaking this multiple laws of physics to come here from another universe or another galaxy. they're actually demons, fallen demons.
What does it say in Ezekiel?
I don't remember the exact passage,
Okay,
but he's reading Ezekiel on his podcast.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm doing is, instead of saying, hey, this celebrity pastor's bad, or hey, this guy, nobody's talking about, he's so stupid. Joe Rogan doesn't know about the Bible, stupid, right?
Yeah.
So do not say, hey, look, he's saying something right. This is good. Like, Joe Rogan, you're getting it. This is great. And we call that net positive content.
Oh, I like
right?
that term.
How can I find Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan, Kanye, whoever, you fill in a blank. How can we find something that they're doing that's good, and we celebrate the good when they're saying something right, instead of saying, you're stupid, you're bad, you're an idiot, you're a libtard, or whatever, right? So that's the temptation that we've had to overcome. And we've really, really made, and we still do it, so I'm not going to say like we're perfect in it. Sometimes it's just Aiden Ross getting finessed by Playboy Cardi for $1 million. That's just funny, and he's an idiot for that, and we're going to laugh about that, right? But generally speaking, that is what we're trying to lean into.
Yeah. No, I understand, because it's I think over the past 5 years in particular, and I assume you've seen this as well, is you see the power, the danger, and the risk of audience capture and of becoming a slave to the algorithm. I've seen many a person fall into this, and I can see why they're doing what they're doing. This is not unique to YouTube, by the way. This is true of X, the app formerly known as Twitter. It's true of Instagram, whatever, because once something starts working, you can double, triple, and quadruple down on that. And I think one of the dangers with it as well is just due to the, what's the right term? Due to the proportionality of views or impressions or whatever it is you can have someone who 90% of your content is type A, and then the type B, which is only 10%, makes up 90% of the views. So now everyone knows you for the type B content, even though 90% of your stuff is type A. And a lot of people are just like, okay, if people want type B, let's just keep doing that. And, I know people who have even just come off social media and stopped doing that because they're just like, man, I'm tired of this. Like I'm here trying to put out stuff that's more positive or wholesome, but everyone just wants the red meat. Everyone just wants, so-and-so destroys this, attacks this. If I look on my own YouTube channel, it's quite fascinating. I did this just recently because I was like, what are my most popular videos? And I want to say about 7 or 8 out of my top 12 or 15 videos are me criticizing the transgender agenda.
Yeah.
Like basically saying the same I mean, on multiple platforms, but it's just like, okay, so if I talk about how goofy the idea that a man can just become a woman is, or that men are competing in female sports, and I'm just like, man, I'm making music, I'm doing all these podcasts, I'm having all these interesting conversations. There's that frustration of like, why is this? Why is this the thing that a million people want to watch? I've had so many more interesting conversations and clips and creative pieces and whatever it is. And if I were just chasing the views, chasing the money, easiest thing to do would just be like, let me just dunk on the left. Let me just dunk on the woke, dunk on. It's not hard to do.
Right.
Like there's stupid stuff happening all the time, right? It could just be like, I'll just chat on this one. And it would be a very easy way to get views. But then it's like, who am I helping with this? What's it really doing?
I think there is a utility to you going on Pierce Morgan and saying, and just laying out a linear argument on why some of the stuff from the leftist, progressive left that's kind of becoming more of the mainstream left is goofy. I think there's a utility to that. And I think sometimes people appreciate someone saying what they're feeling and thinking, but maybe they don't have the boldness to say, and or creating something that's compassionate and gentle. It's not arrogant, and they can send to a friend and be like, look, like Zuby lays this argument out better than I can. I think there's some utility to that. But to your point, if that's all people want, then I think what happens is, in the West, especially in America, and this happens more so in Christian circles, is I think what happens is we slide into a type of Gnosticism, and the Gnostics, two distinguishing ideas that they would hold to, which is knowledge and information is good, and that's the ultimate goal. Like get as much knowledge and as much new stuff and as many new ideas and that sort of stuff. And the second is the spiritual is good, but the material is bad. Right? Your spirit, you're a spirit trapped inside a physical body. That's Gnosticism, right? And so I think in my world, bro, Christians, unfortunately, just want more information, be told the same thing over and over again. And that's not faith. Like faith is placing your faith into practice. So if I'm just giving you the same information and I'm just preaching the gospel over and over to you, like, yes, that's important. We should preach the gospel. Or if I'm saying how bad the devil is and how bad the agenda is, like, yeah, we should be on alert and aware. But the information and inspiration should be causing implementation.
Yes.
And that's the part where I think people are uncomfortable with, is like, hey, I kind of like my messy bed, you know? And it's just easier to complain about the other side and not really do anything. And I'm making it a point to not do that. Like, we're still doing interesting. We did a whole thing on purpose and discovering God's purpose for your life. And we're still packaging it around interesting things. We did a video about Kevin Hart and his mom and his faith, and tying that into the concept of purpose broader. But we're trying to make videos that make people do something. Like, we want you to do something. And this doesn't serve me well. But if I think about my favorite creators, and again, this doesn't serve me well as a creator. But if I think about my favorite creators, the ones that had the most amount of impact in my life, I could think of 2, maybe 3. Number 1 would probably be Dave Ramsey, because I got out of debt listening to his content. Number 2 would probably be Gary Vee, because he got me to creating content. And I'd say recently is probably Alex Hormozy.
Okay.
None of their content is intended for me to listen to indefinitely, right? Dave Ramsey is trying to get me to, baby step 1, get $1,000 emergency fund, get on a budget. Baby step 2, snowball your debt, right? There's a process to it. Gary Vee is trying to get me to document, not create, make content. Alex Hormozy wants me to start a 7-figure business and grow, right? You age out of their content.
Yes.
And you're supposed to. That doesn't serve them well as creators, right? But that's the point. Like, you're not supposed to listen to Dave Ramsey forever.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing over and over again.
It's like a personal trainer. It's like when someone's been working with the same trainer for 5 years, and you come back 5 years later, they look exactly the same.
Right.
They're lifting
That's
exactly
a bad
the same.
trainer.
It's a bad
right?
trainer.
Like, if you keep coming back to the trainer over and over again, either you're not listening and applying the advice, or that's a bad trainer and wants you to stay there in their feedback loop. And I don't want to do that for people. I want to make content, art, books that like empower people. And then if I'm growing and I'm leveling up and I can help them keep leveling up, then praise God for that, you know? But I think that's the tough part, man. It's like, I don't think we need another self-help book necessarily. I don't think we need another conference. I don't think we need another motivational speech. I think we need to help people implement the information they already know. Most people know, if you want to get in shape, man, eat less, work out more, right? Now, we get to figure out, how can we be creative in packaging that in a way that they go, oh, Zuby laid it out this way in his book. It finally clicked for me, right? And I think that becomes the game, is how can I sneak the medicine in with the candy in a way that actually compels someone to act. And if I actually give people the inspiration, information, and implementation to change their life, then I think the brand loyalty goes deeper than they just consume me all the time. Then the brand loyalty becomes when Ruslan drops a merch thing, or when Ruslan comes out with a book, or when Ruslan comes to my town, I got to show up because he helped me change. The same way Dave Ramsey changed my life, or helped me change my life, same way Gary Vee helped me change my life. That's deeper than like, I'm just going to brainlessly watch your content every day.
Man, what I love about your content is multiple things. One thing is that I love that it's not just entertainment. I like the fact that you give people practical advice. And I like the fact that you're not afraid to give advice. I think we live in a strange time where perhaps with the desire to not be judgmental, people are afraid to give advice. It's very much just, I don't want to tell you what to do. You do whatever you want. I think people are very afraid of coming across as any type of judgmental or holding people to any type of standard, or having, even sort of stating what their real morals and values are. And I like the fact that you don't shy away from that. I also like the fact that you don't shy away from just real world stuff and real world challenges. You see what's going on in society and in culture, and you address it. I think that there can be I can understand why people do this, but I think with a lot of Christians, a lot of people of faith, it's like there's two separate worlds, and they only want to operate within the Christian world and only talk to fellow Christians and almost pretend that the world we live in or the nations we live in are not the way that they are, and just sort of stick your head in the sand and pretend that none of it is happening and not address any of those ills. But then I think what's happening is, particularly when it comes to young people, I see this a lot with young men, is they're looking for guidance. They're looking for advice. And a lot of the people I think who would be best equipped to give it, they're either just so disconnected, or they're not on the platforms, or they don't want to get involved in that world. And so a lot of the stuff that they end up consuming or following or turning to oftentimes has a lot of truth in it and some good messaging in it, but it's missing the virtue. It's missing the godliness. It's missing the righteousness. It's got some practical value, but without proper discernment, it can lead people in some strange directions. So I like the fact that I do this as well. Like I'll talk about everything, whether there's conversations I don't particularly like having. It's not pretty, but it's just like, look, this is what it is. Here's where we are. Like when we were talking about health and fitness and whatever, and it's like, look, this is just what the obesity rate is. This is just what it is. Like I didn't make it this way. I don't want it to be like this. I would love to change many things about the UK, many things about the US, whatever it is. There's statistics that I hear and they make me cringe. And I'm like, man, I wish that were not the statistic, but it's not going to serve anyone for me to pretend that's not the stats. So instead of just being a black pillar or a doomer or just ignoring it all, what can we do to improve this? Even if it's just for one person who is listening, how can you not become, one of the 40% of adults who are obese? How can you not be one of the 40% of adults who gets married and gets divorced or whatever the case may be? And I love the fact that I like it when people just address these things and talk about them openly. And I think that's super dope.
Thank you. That means a lot, man, because there's a whole internal spat within Christian YouTube of like, should Christian YouTubers be talking about worldly events and it's bad and you shouldn't be talking about the world? And that's, to me, I'm with you. Like when I look at scripture, I see Paul and Jesus engaged, using metaphors, speaking in ways that's relevant to them. Paul goes as far in Acts 17 to quote their own poets back to them and use their own idols to then tell them about Jesus, which is really trippy to think about. He's in this council of all these religious guys, Greek philosophers, and he walks by and he's like, you guys got all these statues up, but this statue says to an unknown God. So he uses their own idol that says to an unknown God, and then goes on to say, as some of your own poets have said, in him we live and breathe and have our being. And he's quoting their poets, secular, pagan poets, using their own idol that they built, because they had so many idols, they just wanted to have every base covered. So they were like, we're just going to make one to the unknown God. And he uses that and then tells them about Jesus.
Do you know what happened to the gods of the Philistines? They gone.
Yeah. That's a fact. That's a fact. So, and then in the book of 1 Corinthians, right after that, he goes to Corinth. In the book of 1 Corinthians, there's all of these pagan sayings he uses repeatedly to drive home gospel truth. So a lot of our phrases like bad company corrupts good character, that's actually one of their own quotes back to them.
Oh, interesting.
Everything is permissible for me. That's one of their quotes. He's like, everything is permissible for me, but everything is not beneficial, right? So he's like consistently using the things in the culture to drive people to deeper truth, right? And that's something I've always intrinsically done, right? I think the tough part in all of this is there's something about giving generalized advice to a lot of people that may not always be helpful for all people. Because I don't know all of the variables about your life. I don't know the idiosyncrasies about your marriage. So when I'm like, hey, Gallup did a study and 56% of working women said they would have preferred to stay home and be moms had they been given the opportunity to. So men, hey, become a provider. Figure out a way to allow your wife the opportunity to stay home, because 56% of working women with kids 18 and under would have preferred to do that, right? But if we were to scale those numbers down and look at women with kids 5 and under, like I'm pretty sure that number would be way higher.
Probably women, 80% plus.
Yeah, 3 and under.
And I think this is you also have to keep in mind that when they do these type of surveys, this is just what people are willing to admit.
Right. This is what working women are willing to admit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then it said 39% of women said they would they aspire to someday, of single women would aspire someday to be a homemaker.
Interesting.
Right. Those are crazy numbers.
Yeah.
So when I'm telling men these things, I'm just telling you what it is. Like, this is what it is. Now, I don't know the idios. I don't know if you have a disability. I don't know if you have a mental condition. You might have bipolar. Like, you might, I know someone that has schizophrenia, and in them doing a good job of taking care of their mental health, their schizophrenia makes them sleep more, right? Like, I don't know all the idiosyncrasies. So sometimes it's like you're giving generalized advice, but I don't know. This dude's wife is an RN and makes more in 3 days of work than he does in 5 days of work. I don't know all those idiosyncrasies, but I'm going to say, hey, these things are generally true.
Yes.
Women generally are going to want to stay home when they have babies. And that's good. And we should work towards giving them the opportunity to do that. But that doesn't, you can't always kind of use a shotgun method, right? Sure. So it can become hard to do that. And there's also folks, and I don't know what you feel about this. I'd actually be curious to hear your thoughts. There's folks who have different personalities. You heard of the big 5 personality, right? Yeah. Neuroticism, conscientiousness. So I'm like very low in neuroticism. Like I don't freak out. My wife is low in neuroticism. Okay. We don't freak out. We don't cry. We don't worry. We don't fight. We don't yell. We don't. Right?
Low neuroticism gang, man. I'm right? bottom 1% percentile.
Right. So me and you could have this conversation, and we'd be like, yeah, dude, like if you're fat, just stop eating so much to work out, right? But we're also probably not emotional eaters. We're also probably not on a roller coaster of emotions all day and all these different things, right? So I think I also am learning to be empathetic to like, people just have different personality types.
Yep.
And my personality might just make me a freak in certain regards that like, if I have an issue, I'm looking at myself to fix the issue. I'm not blaming the system. I'm not blaming society. I'm not blaming Biden. I'm not blaming Trump. How can I take responsibility and fix the issue? So I don't know what you make of the personality. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on like the big 5 personality and how much of it determines people's ability to function and react well.
Yeah, well, of course, we all have different personalities. That's just a given, whether someone wants to use Big 5 or Myers-Briggs or any of the other, what's the other one? I don't know, whatever personality model. Yeah. And these things are going to affect a lot of things, as are people's backgrounds, upbringing, and so on. I think that other people's emotional responses to things you say, especially on internet scale, are not really your responsibility.
Sure.
You know, if you put out something there and 50% of people misunderstand it, it was probably poorly communicated. If you put something out there and 99% of people completely understood, you know, if I said that I prefer dogs to cats, and 1% of people start asking me why I hate cats and why I want all cats to die and why, you know, then that's not my problem. Right. That's just when I'm like, that's on you, dude. Yeah. Like I said what I said quite clearly. And I think we also have to remember that fewer than 10% of people ever comment. And so the comments are not even quite, that's good. It's not even clear how representative that they necessarily are. And I also just think, like, even if you communicate perfectly, there will be people who misunderstand you. There will be people who understand you, but maliciously pretend that they don't so that they can make you look bad and try to put you on the defensive. It's a strange thing that I see a lot, particularly online. And I also just think that you do what you can. We need a range of different messengers in this world. This is a point I've made to a lot of people. I've done so many interviews over the last few years, some with some, very controversial people, whether it's it's an Andrew Tate or, even Elon, right? People are like, oh, what about this? What are that? And people want you to defend everything they've ever said and done and whatever. I'm like, and I believe that the world needs a range of messengers. And so I think it's, how would I put it? If I know that somebody is out there and I know that they're genuinely positively impacting millions of people, I'm careful, unless they're leading people down like a particularly dark path or, there's something very manipulative or scammy going on, I'm quite careful with my criticisms, at least publicly, because I believe we need a range of different types of messengers. There will be people who they hear me say something and it lands for them. Whatever it is with my background or the way that I speak or the way I look or just how I say, and it resonates completely with this person. Yeah. And then there's someone else who hears what I'm saying and they're like, I'm not feeling that.
Yeah,
It
probably
lands
because they
flat.
see themselves in you to some extent.
Yeah, and I think that happens. It could be something as simple as, I don't know, a man says this message and it doesn't really resonate with an 18-year-old woman. A woman says the exact same thing and she's like, oh, okay, now I get it. I don't know, you heard it from your mom, but it didn't click, and then you hear it from your dad and you're like, oh, okay, I get that. So I just think we need a range of messengers, and with that, you have to accept, look, not everyone's going to feel me, not everyone's going to get it. It goes beyond that as well. There's going to be some people who have a totally distorted view of who I am and what I believe. For me, actually, this has been the hardest. This has probably been the hardest part of the growth over the last 5 years, is for me to accept that I know there are thousands of people out there in the world. It could be hundreds of thousands. I don't know the number, but there's definitely thousands of people out there who have a completely incorrect viewpoint and opinion of who I am, what I believe, what I've done. There's someone out there who thinks that Zuby is a self-hating black man who's a grifting far-right conservative who supports white supremacy, and he's transphobic and he's a bigot and he hates women, and he's about like, what? Like,
Yeah.
But there's people out there who believe that, and that sucks. Like, I wish that were not the case, because I know my heart, I know my intentions, I know my beliefs. I would like everyone to have at least an accurate picture of me, whether or not they agree or disagree with my opinions. I'd like them to know I'm not this evil soul who's whatever, or I'm being funded by this government or that organization. Right? I've seen some like pretty wacky things out there that I'm a Satanist, or I'm in the Illuminati or whatever. There's one that
I started seeing you react to that on your Twitter.
Yeah, and you're just like, man, and you're seeing the comments, and people are all like, oh yeah, I knew there was something suspicious about him. And then what they do is they connect you with other people. So they're like, oh, well, he spoke to Elon, and you can't talk to Elon unless you're part of their club. Oh, and he met with Andrew Tate. So I've had people try to say, oh, like I'm part of some human trafficking, like you,
that's crazy.
You know what I mean? Like they just apply whatever they think of anyone else who you've even met or spoken to, and they now apply that to you, and you're just like, you want to correct it all. That's why you probably see me reply on occasion, and I'm like, and then you get to a point, and I'm just like, you know what? I have to accept that the more people know me, and sure, I'll get more love and more praise, and help more people. But that percentage of people, that number of people who just have a totally messed up viewpoint of who I am is also going to grow. And I wish that were not. I wish that were not the case. But I found actually that to be the thing that's the most difficult to just accept, because I think when you're trying to do good and you're trying to help people and your heart, you don't want people to think that you're this horrible, terrible person who you're not. And you'll have the same. There will be people out there, thousands, maybe millions, who think that you are completely not who you are.
Yeah, I mean, you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? Which is real funny.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about something you discussed. There's a lot of conversations going on right now about just the dynamics between men and women, about marriage, about relationships, about the struggles of young men, the struggles of young women, and so on. I mean, you've been with your wife for approaching 20 years now.
20 years, yeah.
Which is awesome. That's incredible. But man, in 20 years, the world has changed in so many ways, and I know that you see it. I know there's people who are kind of oblivious to it and think it's still the same as it was in the 50s or the 60s or whatever. But things have massively changed. So what is how would I put it? What's your overall sort of take or feeling around some of these conversations that are going on? You've kind of got the TradCon versus Red Pill thing, which is happening. You've got I don't know. I'm just seeing from all angles, this conversation is certainly growing online.
I think the conversations are good. I think we should be having conversations. I think we should be talking to each other, not about each other or past each other. I think that's a net positive. Like, I think the fact that conversations are happening is a good thing. I think the world has changed. Like, it would be disingenuous for me to say that the world hasn't changed. what I do believe is I think the tried and true is still working for the people that are working it. And this is what I mean by the tried and true. The people who are genuinely attempting to walk with God and to do relationships his way, everywhere I look, and again, this might be selection biased on my part, I see people winning everywhere. I'm talking folks under 25 getting married. I could tell you 2 or 3 couples that got married in the last year, right? And so the tried and true aspect of it, I think, still remains the same, even though we have way more distractions than ever before. I think the hard part is people, one, don't know what the tried and true is. 2, they are too enamored with the distractions to do anything else about it. And 3, don't have the effort to even do so. If I explain it to them, they go, that's just too hard, and they throw their hands up. Right? And so I think that becomes the tough part in terms of this new world that we're in. It's like, yeah, obviously, like, the world has changed. I mean, it changed 10 years. It changed in 5 years. It changed
massively.
Right? Since we first met, it's changed a lot. But I think that things that are true in terms of relationships and building a marriage and a family and a healthy life together are going to be timeless, right? They're going to be the same principles that, you know, the Bible talks about from antiquity. Like, it's going to be the same thing.
Do you think it's getting harder, or has gotten harder?
I think there's more distractions
than
ever before, for sure. So harder, not harder, yes, no, all the above. It's like harder for who? Harder for the person on social media that can't put their phone down? Absolutely, it's gotten harder.
It's most people.
Absolutely. Well, but here's the punchline. Most people aren't on social media.
Well, they are, but they're not super active.
As active as me or you might be.
I think the average person spends about 2 to 3 hours per day on social media.
Right. So this is built that everyone is on social media all the time, right? So if like we pull the layer back and go, like, my wife's not on Instagram right now. There's a lot of people that just aren't on Instagram.
For sure.
Right? There's a lot of people that use Instagram in moderation. There's a lot of people that don't use Instagram at all. There's a lot of people that have Instagram and they'll literally pull it out to post something and then they'll close the app and not open it again. So I think if you're on social media and if you're a content creator and you are keeping up with everything, I think it's way harder. But I don't think most people are as immersed in social media as we are.
That's definitely true. We're super users. I don't know the stats, but I would assume that for people, let's say under 25, the percentage of people who are using it more and more, and how much of an influence it has on how they see the world and their behaviors is going to be quite different from, let's say, people who are 35 plus, let alone 40 plus, just because they are true social media natives.
Yes.
Like, from I was talking to someone not long ago about social media and smartphones, and I was having the conversation about at what age to you know, is the appropriate age for a child to have a smartphone.
Never.
Okay, you say never. Okay, well, I was curious because I was having convo, and it turned out her child got a smartphone at 4.
That's a big one.
At 4, and I was just like, wow. I was expecting, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14 or something, and there's a surprising number of people who, you know, they're giving their kids smartphones under the age of 10.
Yeah.
I thought that would be like really rare and strange, and it turns out that it's not as rare as I thought.
Yeah.
Kids are having these things really young. I mean, smartphones didn't even start until I was in my late teens or early 20s, and so they are really just growing up with TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all of these things. And man, I don't know. I'm glad that I would not want to be a young man right now. I genuinely wouldn't. I'm honestly glad I was born when I was born and not 10 years or 15 years later, because man, it's one of the few things that genuinely worries me and concerns me is just the effect it has on young people in general. But I think it's fascinating how it sort of differently is affecting teenage boys and young men versus teenage girls and young women. And because they don't use them the same way. And it's just it's so new. The early data is not looking good at all.
You think it's like going to be the equivalent of the cigarette?
Worse.
You think it's going to be worse?
Far worse. Yeah, I think it's a much bigger invention in terms of, because I mean, even if you think of what we do, obviously we're in the 0.0 whatever % of the population who's been able to build a lucrative business and a following and everything with it. But even if you think of what we do and what we've done, sometimes I'm just like, this is so unnatural. This has never existed before. The fact that I can take my phone and I can just write something and I can put a message out to over 1 million people and they see it, no one in history could do that. People all over the world in real time. Even if you were a king, even if you were the leader of a country, you couldn't reach millions of people around the world immediately with audio, with a video, with text, whatever it is. So to just kind of be walking around all day with that and be so interconnected to billions of people, there's something amazing about it, of like, you can just be like, hey, I want to reach out to that person, to talk to that person. It's cool, but it's just totally unprecedented. And when you think of the people who are downstream, who are just consuming, scrolling, I mean, you see, it's not good for people's minds. Most adults can't handle it. I'm very aware that most adults can't handle it. So when I see children using it and on it, I'm like, okay, if people my age and older cannot put down their smartphones and cannot stop the doom scrolling and are getting locked in all this stuff, then what hope does a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old have? I just think they're getting a very distorted view of the world in many ways, and
I agree.
Of relationships, of the opposite sex, of what they should aspire to, for girls in particular, what they should look like, what they should look like, and the rates of attempted suicide, depression, anxiety, suicide, all those things, particularly in females, it's going up and up and up. And
do you think it will work itself out the way cigarettes did? Because I went to Paris.
Okay. Yeah,
everybody smoked.
Oh yeah,
that was an anomaly to me. That was like, y'all weird. Like, I love Paris, but like, what are y'all doing? Why are you guys all smoking? This is gross, right? And versus like, you walk around here, you go, well, like, if we were to go on a walk in my neighborhood, like, no one smokes.
Yeah,
right. We go to downtown Carlsbad, no one's smoking. So it seems like, from a cigarette standpoint, like, it's kind of worked itself out, and then it reinvented itself with vaping, right? Like, it's like, yo, you're kind of a loser if you smoke now, with the exception, like, if you're in like New York or Paris, and it's like, then the people smoke there.
I think the biggest difference is just the power of the technologies. So I think with social media, you have fundamentally changed the way that people communicate, the way they meet each other, the way they form relationships, the way they communicate, their perceptions of the world, and you're carrying it around all day and spending 2, 3, 4 hours a day on the thing. And I don't think that genie goes back in the bottle. I think with cigarettes don't really change human behavior in a fundamental way. Social media and smartphones do. The way people behave now is very different to 20 years ago. Even something as simple as taking a photo of your food, or taking a selfie. Like, what the heck was a selfie? Even 20 years ago, like, the idea of taking a photo of yourself, it's pretty weird. It was pretty strange. It was pretty goofy. The idea of online dating, the idea of meeting someone online, even not romantic, just meeting someone online and having internet friends. If you were a super geek, it was like, okay. Like, I remember when internet dating started, and it was like, if someone said that,
they met on the internet as a stigma.
Yeah, massive stigma. So that's what I think. It's the next thing that I see having this sort of complete world-changing thing is AI, because it's not the same as a television or a radio, or I don't know, the motor vehicle or whatever. It's like, no, this is going to fundamentally alter the way that things happen. Yeah. From, just look at what's going to do to the job market. And people's sense of meaning and purpose, and the idea of, your labor and working to, I had a convo with Elon about it,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, "Yeah, I think if it goes well, we'll get to an age of infinite abundance where anything you want, you can just have." Now, I think if you think about that for more than 3 seconds, you're like, "That's not good." Like, for all of human history, people have had to work to have, and with that work comes meaning. Comes purpose, comes a sense of responsibility, comes a skill set, comes feeling valuable to yourself, your family, your community, whatever. If someone just wrote you checks every month and you didn't have to do the work that you do, yeah, you'd be able to provide for your family, but your meaning and purpose and position as a man, you'd be like, wait, I'm not doing any, like I want to work for the money. I don't want to just it would be like just being jacked without ever going to the gym, and you're just jacked. It's like, no, you want to train for it. It's the effort. That's where the meaning and the purpose comes from. So this sort of age of abundance, it appeals to some people, but I'm just like, man, I don't think that would put humanity in a good place. I think people would just become more gluttonous and more lazy and more depraved, and like, what are you going to do with all that time? Not everyone's super creative and they're going to create artwork and become musicians and whatever. It's like, no, they're just going to sit around watching more TV and scrolling more social media and just not going to know their place in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty doomsday scenario you just laid out for us. Thanks a lot, Zuby. Thanks a lot.
And that's the positive scenario.
That's the positive. I see it like this. I think that this is going to sound weird coming from a Christian, but like, I think natural selection works a lot of this out. I think people who want to be distracted and do the things that don't lead to any meaning to their life and not figure out ways to meet real people, to start real families and build real homes and have real kids and have all these things. I think you fast forward to like, who's even having kids within the same home right now? It's religious people.
Yes.
Right? So let's flesh that out 50, 60 years. Who's going to be, what is going to be the population? It's going to be more people that come from solid families and people that come from like, wow, they really didn't want you. Right? It's going to be those two extremes. And I hope that the people that come from solid families continue having solid families and continue building on those legacies and laying out the foundations for the next generation to come. But I don't know. I don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah. I had a podcast recently with a guy named Stephen Shaw, one of the world's leading population demographers. And he studies what's called the birth gap. So he's studying underpopulation. He lives in Japan. He's lived there for, I believe, 7 years, and he moved there specifically to study this issue. And as you probably know, every developed country in the world now has a below replacement birth rate, with the exception of Israel. And some of the numbers are, when I talk to him, some of the numbers are, some stuff is scary. So everyone thinks that Japan is the lowest. Japan's not the lowest birth rate in the world. It's South Korea. South Korea is down to 0.7.
Yeah.
So replacement rate is 2.1. South Korea is down to 0.7 births on average per woman.
Yeah, that's what they say stirred on. Sorry to cut you off. That's what stirred on the Squid Games.
Oh, interesting.
The whole framing of the Squid Games is in a society where they're so crippled with debt because birth rates are down.
I didn't know that. I haven't seen Squid Game.
Yeah.
So here's the stat. I think I've quoted on multiple podcasts now. If it continues the way it is, for every South Korean right now, for every 100 South Koreans, there will be 4 great-grandchildren.
Wow. That's crazy. Whew.
That is...
What are they gonna do? They're gonna have to open up their borders. They're gonna have to do something.
They're either gonna just need to bring on the immigration, or
maybe they'll let some of North Korea in.
Yeah,
take out the dictator and just open the borders.
It's genuinely scary. It's like people are fretting about our countries with 1.5, 1.6, whatever. That's 0.7.
Yeah.
Like that's just falling off a complete cliff. I'm just like, man, that's and I think what's extra concerning about it is I don't think any civilization has ever come back from that.
Yeah.
once it's dropped that low,
Yeah.
as far as I'm aware, there's never been well, I don't think it's ever been able to drop that low because
I was going to say, has this ever happened before?
people have sex and they have babies,
Right.
whereas now that can artificially be prevented.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm not South Korean, but I'm just like, man, that is a very sobering. That's a sobering statistic right there. That's like a complete population collapse if there's not some type of intervention.
So I can't speak to the idiosyncrasies of South Korea, what's happening there, but I am familiar that Japan, South Korea, that a lot, especially some countries in Europe, same thing, right? Lowering birth rates.
Even some of the more religious ones, like Italy. Italy's really low. I want to. Italy's maybe like 1.2 or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, every country in Europe is below replacement.
I could speak to what I think is working if people acknowledge that what they really want is a family, right? Like if men could, how about this way? Men can acknowledge they want sex, women can acknowledge they want love.
Yes.
Right? If we can come there, right? You want sex with a human, and women, you want love from a man and a family and someone to hopefully provide for you, right? If that's the framework, I think then we go, okay, so most women are going to have kids at some point in their lifetime. I think it's like 86% in America. It's a high percentage.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
No.
What is it?
I don't
It's
think
still
so.
the majority though, right?
What, man, I don't want to quote an incorrect statistic. I can tell you another stat that's scary. This is one I don't even like saying it because this is another one I got from Stephen Shaw, which is that of women who are 30 and do not yet have children, half of them never will.
Yeah, yeah.
So by age 30, it's 50-50. That's just the stat.
Just like the likelihood of them getting pregnant, or if they get pregnant to carry to term.
No, just 50% of them will never become mothers.
Whoa.
50% will, 50% will not.
That's
That's just the number where the odds become 50-50. All things considered.
Gosh, that's heavy.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm seeing, and I'll give you an anecdote.
And let me give you one more scary stat.
Sure.
Is
And I'm gonna give you some hope.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. Maybe he'd be a good person to talk to on your show. Actually, he got some real interesting stuff. So a lot of people hear about this, and actually, people think it's generally people are like, oh, well, if people don't want to have kids, then kind of what's the problem? But of the people who ended up childless for life, let's say over the age of 50, I think with no kids, he studied this, and I think he said that was somewhere between 80 and 90% of them did want to. So the majority of people who are going through life without having children, it's not that, oh, they made a conscious decision that, oh, I just don't want to have kids. They wanted to, but either they timed the clock out, or they felt they didn't meet the right person, or they prioritized their career to the degree that by the time they started considering it was too late, fertility issues, whatever the case may be. The vast majority of people in the different countries that he studied who did end up childless, it's what he called unplanned childlessness. So it's actually different from what most people might imagine.
So we could agree that generally speaking, most people do want to have
Most
kids.
people want to have kids,
Okay,
absolutely.
cool. So that's like a good framework.
Yes.
So this is what I'm seeing, and I could tell you story after story like this. I don't know if did you meet Chris last time when he was here?
I don't recall.
Chris is our basically our lead editor.
Okay.
Chris just got engaged
Good.
a couple days ago. Chris isn't super duper active on social media. He got this job because he leaned into social media and just did the 100 reach outs and just kept reaching out. And finally we were like, all right, dude, like we'll give you a shot.
Yeah.
He's not super active on social media. He comes from a two-parent household that eventually got divorced. So he doesn't have like this clean story, right? And he just got engaged. How he got engaged was he joined a church around here called North Coast Church. He didn't just join the church and come casually. He joined the church and started serving in their junior high ministry, started mentoring kids and volunteering. And in that, he met a young lady maybe 18 months ago. They started dating. They have aligning values. they're both in communities that can love them and encourage them, but also tell them the truth about them. Hey, you need to think about these things. Hey, you need to be considerate for these things. Hey, you need to change in these areas. Sometimes there's women that are married or have been married, like there's a widow in our community that can help these single women to become the type of women that are going to be solid wives and mothers, and at the same time help the men become providers and understand what the standard is. Now, Chris is engaged. They're going to be married, I think, probably by the end of this year.
Okay.
That's just one story, right? Zach is under 25. They had just had the first kid a year ago.
Nice.
Right? John Keith just had his first kid like 2 months ago. I got to go down there and see them have the kid. He's under 24, right? So I can show you example after example after example of young people getting married and starting families and thriving and flourishing. Now, is there challenges? Is there postpartum depression after having a kid? Like, all those things are real.
Sure.
But if I am part of the 80 to 90% that want to be married and have kids and have a family someday, and there's abundance of that in a specific community, I'm probably going to want to take a look at that community and say,
Agreed.
What is it about these folks over here? And what it is they limit their access to the internet and if they're even on Instagram or social media or TikTok, they go to in-person gatherings where they're around other people and they're of utility and use. So they're volunteering with kids or serving in a local church. They're being known. They have friends. They're healthy. They have friends that can tell them you need to go to therapy or you need to start working out or you need to eat better. You're getting low, right? And so there's like this phrase can kind of come off cringe to some people, but like it takes a village,
yes,
right? There's a community around these people. And they have their head on straight. They're like, ultimately, I'm a part of the 80, 90% that will want kids. And instead of playing this game of chasing my career, I can build a life with someone that instead of waiting until I'm 30 and I have my career figured out and I got all the things and I make the right amount. No. I could build a family
Stop calling me out.
Yeah, you're an exception, but you know what I mean. Like this is men and women, right? It's men and women that are like, oh, I gotta have my education, I gotta have this done, I gotta have this done, I gotta have this done.
I think it's hard because of just the way the world is now, economically, and the situation is even people who want that more traditional arrangement, whether male or female, it's just a lot harder to do now than it was a few decades ago.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean it's impossible at all. There's people doing it every day.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the major challenges. I think it puts people in this weird situation where they're like, man, I would ideally like to do that, but how realistically can I get there, and what percentage of people can get there?
When I got married, our first apartment was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. We always had a 2-bedroom because I always had my studio. I always did something creative, right? 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment was $1,100. To get that around here now, minimal $2,500.
Yep.
Right? So now we're like, hold on, this is starting to sound like LA. This is starting to sound like New York, right? I mean, New York's probably way more expensive than that.
New York, $5K plus.
Yeah, $5K plus.
Yeah.
So I get it. Like, I get it. I get that the cost of living has went up.
Yeah.
I also get that I know dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people under 30, many of which are under 25, that they're figuring it out. They have values. They're figuring it out. They are hustling. They're working. They're sacrificing. They're trying to get their income stabilized. I know people who would like an apartment, but figured out a way to move into a mobile home.
Yes.
And are like, yo, I'll tough it out for the first couple of years.
Do you know what I think? Do you know what I think is the reality? And no one likes to hear this, let alone accept it. But I think a lot of people need to lower their expectations, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
I'm not talking long term or for your entire life, but I think that there's just, when you think of like modern Western people, the expectations of everything, I think, are just so high. I think one reason why our ancestors and forefathers were able to do a lot of what they did was because the expectations were just a lot lower. I mean, it's fascinating. Even on this topic we're discussing, there's something strange how on both an individual level and on a nation level, the more people earn, the fewer children they think they can afford, and the fewer they tend to have.
Right.
I mean, if you look at many poorer communities or poorer countries, people are there were like, very cool. I got my 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids. And then it's kind of like have you ever seen the beginning of Idiocracy?
Yeah. The dumb people have more kids. Yep. That movie, how spot on was that movie, bro?
It's scary, man.
Scary,
it's a
right? We're
documentary.
literally looking at they're throwing around Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson running, and the president in the movie is a wrestler. Right?
I know.
That's why they say he appeared on Rogan, by the way.
Oh,
they said
okay.
he appeared, the conspiracy theory is that he appeared on Rogan because they were testing the waters to see his likability and if he would run for president. But anyway, I didn't mean to. That movie was very spot on.
Oh, for real? It was Mike Judge, I think, who did that. Yeah. And so that's fascinating. You get these weird things that they sound like oxymorons, where it's like, wait, why is it that Elon excluded for the most part when you've got people who are more highly educated, university degrees, earning lots of money, six-figure earners, 7, 8-figure net worth or whatever, and then they're like, okay, we can only afford one. We're like two absolute maximum. It's a strange. It makes sense in a way, but it's also the opposite of what people probably would expect.
Yeah. I think there's something to that, and this is what I think the root of it is, to kind of come full circle in terms of art, music, entrepreneurship. I had on Jonathan Peugeot on.
Okay, cool.
He was here last week, and we were talking about this dude, married, family, goes to Kenya for 7 years with his wife and kids, comes back, tries to get a corporate job, and then eventually transitions into art and starts making art. And I go, how did you do that? How did you become an art? Like, how did you get into iconography? And like, there's one of his pieces right there, by the way. I'll show it to you. And he was like, I had to learn to accept to be poor for a while.
Yes.
And I was like, okay. And the more I peeled away at that onion, I discovered, like they had no debt. They avoided debt at every expense. They had a house that they had gotten and they had almost paid it off. So they decreased when they were gone in Kenya. Their house was being rented out, which was paying off the mortgage. Okay. And so by the time they got back, it was cheaper for them just to live in their house. And then he just was like, I didn't really have that many expenses. And so I'll look up and I have all these commissions, and I just transitioned, right? So I think, to your point, like, again, decreasing that burn rate for the sake of what do you ultimately want? Most of us, to your point, most folks 50 who were single without kids wanted a family.
Yes.
But I think if we could just come to that conclusion without having to go through that pain and say, look, most of y'all want families. Most of you guys want a wife and kids, and you want a family. Lower your expectations. Be willing to sacrifice in the short term so that you can have what you want in the long term. And it's not going to be pretty, and it's not going to be comfortable, and it's not going to be peaches all the time and easy all the time. But what is the alternative? Like being 50 with a cat?
Yeah. I think something that's great about these conversations that are happening now online is that people can now see, if you're a young person who's listening to this or who's watching, you can actually see in real time the outcomes of all of these different options and lifestyles. Because you can see people online who are 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years old who have taken these different life paths, and you can see how it's worked out for them, and you can see often how happy they are, or
you can see
unhappy,
who you want to be, who you want to become.
Exactly. So these experiments have played out. A lot of stuff got, from what I understand of history, in the 1960s, a lot of this experimentation really, really started, and now you can see, okay, how did I'm an independent woman. I don't need no man. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. How did that work out for those individuals?
Yep.
Right. You can see. There's guys I followed online for, at this point, 20 years. Guys I started following in my teens, and you can kind of see the path they've taken. This guy's like, all right, I'm just gonna be a pickup artist, super player, just whatever, nettle settle down, and you're now in your 40s or whatever. And man, like, that's not looking appealing right there. Like, that's looking kind of lonely and loveless
lame.
and right.
Yeah.
And then you can see other people. Okay, cool. Like, they took this path, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I can see how you go. And some people start on one path, and then they change. And so I think rather than going through it all yourself and going through all the pain and the suffering and there's a lot of stuff in life that's avoidable. And so you can just look to people who are older, even if they're not wiser, you can look at them and you can be wiser and you can be like, okay, I want to aspire to that. And that is what I don't want to be like. Yeah. And I think that's a great way to do it. And it's so visible now.
Yeah. And I think my heart would be, can I help people compress time? Like, don't make the mistakes that, you know, the journey that took me 20 years, maybe the person who's listening, I could avoid them 15 years of the headache and just like, let me just get you to 5 years of what you're supposed to be doing, right? That's how I'm thinking about it. It's like, I feel like in exposure and in conversations, like you can compress time for people. And then instead of having to struggle and do all these things, there's still going to be some struggle, but at least choose the good struggle, right? Like you're going to struggle with your fitness and health either way. Might as well get to the gym and get under them weights and learn to train instead of the doctor telling you, hey, man, can't keep living this way. You know, you got high blood pressure. I said, all my buddies who are like in their 40s now are like losing weight. And I'm like, y'all could have did this 15 years ago. I told y'all.
Yes.
Like I told y'all 15 years ago that you could lose the weight. You don't got to be this person. And they were like, it's too hard. And now they're all of a sudden, everyone's on keto.
Yep.
You know, everyone's losing weight.
It's interesting because we're both at that age where you can really tell who took care of themselves and who didn't.
Right. And they look decades older.
Yes.
The guys who didn't take care of themselves look like death.
Yeah. Because in your 20s, like you're 22, 25, whatever, people can kind of do whatever and you don't really see the effect so much. But by the time people are getting into their, you know, mid 30s, early 40s, you can start really seeing, okay, like this man took care of himself well, and you know, still fit as a fiddle, still looking good, whatever. And then you got other people who, man, they're 38 years old and they're looking 50.
I saw some of those
feeling
folks.
50.
Do you guys do the 20-year high school reunion thing?
Gosh.
I just went to mine. Did you go to yours?
No,
bro.
Oh boy.
Well, you're a little younger than me, but bro, there was folks in there that I was like, ooh,
yeah,
life did a number on you.
Yeah,
you know. And then there was like all the popular girls, the cheerleaders.
Okay,
I was like, whew. Life did a number on you, girl.
Oh no! Oh no!
But yeah, man, that's what you're saying is real, bro. And so I just go, hey, you know, go outside, like go make some friends, go join a church, go read the Bible, like go around, get around some good people. They're not perfect. They're gonna hurt you. They're gonna fail you, but at least they want the best for you. At least they want you to do the thing that is the most good, that is the most beneficial, that brings the most good and beauty into the world. Go get around those types of people, and those people are everywhere. Those people are in every state. It's not they don't exist in California. No, they're everywhere. And listen, if you choose, like I have chose to stay in California, well, guess what? It's gonna cost a little more money. So you know what? My house isn't as big as I would like it to be.
Sure.
Right, but I'm okay with that. You've been around. Like it's nice. This is great. I'm so pumped. I can't wait to pay this house off.
Awesome.
Right, pay the house off, and I'm good. Like I don't need a bigger house because I like being 7 miles from the beach. You know, and if you're gonna stay in Miami and in New York and California, just be okay with, hey, I may not be able to live as in a big of a house as I want, or you know, live as nice of a and I think that's the part, like people don't count the cost, or be okay to moving somewhere where the weather's not as nice.
Exactly.
Right? Go live in Vegas, go live in, I don't know, Arkansas, go live in, right? Like go live somewhere else that is developing, that isn't going to be as nice, but at least the cost of living is a little bit more concise.
Or you can go outside the USA, guys.
Yeah, Dubai, right?
I'm big on geo arbitrage, man. Like,
how's Dubai treating you?
Dubai's great, man.
How often are you there?
I've been there, I think 4 or 5 times in the past year.
Okay. How long are your stays there?
I haven't actually lived there yet.
Okay, so you just still kind of popping
I'm a
in
resident.
Yeah.
But I've just been traveling so much, man. But I tell people the world is a big place.
Yeah.
The world is a big place, and man, at least at a minimum, go check out some other countries. Go have a visit. You might be you'll be surprised by what's out there.
I really liked Israel.
Okay.
But I don't think I could ever live there because of
it's too heated.
You know what I'm saying?
Too
like
much.
I was there and I was like, this is a vibe. They got an Armenian quarter in the old city. I could potentially, because I'm Armenian, potentially get a place there.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Yeah, bro. Because like the Armenian population is decreasing, but it's like historically there's this Armenian quarter in Jerusalem, and so I could potentially, you know, maneuver my way in there. And And then like all the October 7th stuff happened. I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, but that was a place I was really like, I could see myself
I hear
having
that.
a place here.
Yeah,
you
man.
know?
Well, you know, as
Weather's
time
nice.
goes on, as your children get older, like who knows, man?
Yeah.
You can have multiple spots.
Yeah, it's true.
You can spend X amount of time per year here,
Yep.
and a few months over there, whatever the case may be, man. But yeah, I just like to open people's minds up to the options.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people feel like there are far fewer options than there are.
What's the nicest place that like you've been to in the United States that was like, oh, this is a pleasant surprise? Like where the weather was decent, it wasn't too gross weather-wise, but it was also like, this community here is dope. Like I like this.
Wow. I mean, my favorite states are Texas, Tennessee, and Florida.
Okay.
Those are generally my favorite states. I think that California is probably the most beautiful in terms of just natural beauty. I mean, I like warm weather. So if I were to live in the States, I couldn't be up north in one of the cold spots. To me, that's like a step backwards from the UK. But I like a lot of different places. It's even hard to do it on a state level because city to city and place to place.
Just give me some cities. Would
different.
South Florida for you?
Yeah, I love Miami.
Yeah.
Miami, I actually think Miami is one of the best cities in the world. I would say like certainly my top 20, but I've been to hundreds of them.
Yeah.
I like Dallas. I like Austin. I like Nashville. I've been to some other places in Florida. I haven't spent that much time, but like Tampa, I spent some time in Palm Beach and thought it was pretty cool. But I'm sure there's tons of gems. That I went to Arizona for the first time not long ago. So like Scottsdale and Phoenix.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I don't know. I just tell people, I get asked all the time, like, where's the best place? Whether it's country or city. I'm always like, man, like people have their preferences. People like different things.
Yeah.
From weather to laws to policies to your aspirations to what type of job you do.
How big is your house?
How big
small is your house?
I think people just, man, one of my recommendations, I just recommend, man, if you're a young man listening to this podcast, especially if you are single and not sort of tied into anything, get your passport, man. Get a passport and just go and check out.
Go see some other places.
Go see some other countries. You don't need a huge budget to do it at all. Again, lower your expectations, right? If you want to stay in 5-star hotels, you better be balling.
Yep.
But just if you've never left your country, leave it.
Go see the world.
Go see some stuff. You're not going to get to all 196 or whatever it is countries, but even just checking out another 2 or 3 to begin with it will make a difference. You could get a flight out to somewhere in Europe, and then, I mean, you can be, if you fly to Berlin or if you fly to Prague, you're a couple hours driving distance from, so like 3 European capitals like Prague, Czech Republic, Bratislava, Slovakia, Vienna, Austria are all within like 3 hours drive of each other. You're within 3 hours drive of 3 capitals of 3 different countries. Just land, rent a car, check out some spots. Go explore. You can head over, check out France, Germany, whatever it is. I mean, just Texas itself is like the size of, I don't know, 10 European countries all together are like the size of Texas.
Yep.
So geographically, you can see
you
a
can
lot
drive
and
across
learn
Texas. You can go see all of Europe.
You can see a lot and learn a lot without, even traveling that far. It's very concentrated. So that's my advice to people, man. Last thing I wanted to touch on, bro, because we can talk forever. You're one of my favorite people to talk to in this world. I know that you're working on a book, and I want you to tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I've been toying with this idea of like, what is like the single thing that I can impart into people, young people specifically, but not just young people, people in general. And I think that from my vantage point, there's an all-out assault on ambition. And it's coming from the policy leftist ideology, meta Marxism, meta modernity, post-modernity nonsense, right? It's coming from that world where like if someone's ambitious, if someone wants to build a business, if someone wants to have a family, like they're taking up resource and like climate justice and why do anything, like, right? It's very nihilistic in terms of some of the stuff there, right? So like there's an actual war, I think, on young people who are ambitious, being shamed into like, don't know, like, why would you want to start something and build something? Like, that's bad. That's evil. right? You know, that's the patriarchy. That's what fill in the ism, right?
Toxic capitalism.
Toxic capitalism, right? So I think it's from that standpoint. But this is what I discovered, man, is that there's a subtle version of it in Christianity, and it's this: money is evil, success is evil. If you become successful, if you have money, Satan will take you and you will walk away from God and you will go to hell. And all rich people are greedy and they don't care about poor people and they don't care about, and then I started meeting wealthy people, especially wealthy people that love Jesus. And they're the most generous and they could do the most to help people. And they are the most resourceful and they're the kindest people, right? And so I'm like, there's something happening in the minds of a lot of people where there's this cognitive dissonance. There's these two ideas that, like, I feel like I want to do something meaningful with my life. And not just for the sake of me building a legacy and a brand, but like for the sake of honoring God with what I have on this side of eternity. And that's being assaulted from every standpoint, right? In the church, in the world. And so I'm writing a book on the concept of godly ambition. What does godly ambition mean? Because regular ambition is going to be all about you and you getting yours and do you and right. And that's vanity. That's not going to last. But godly ambition is, hey, here are the things that God values, and align yourself with God's values and God's purpose. And then the ambition becomes the fuel for you to fulfill whatever it is God's macro capital P purpose for you, but then also your assignment, or what I call your lower P purpose, right? What is that assignment for the season that you're in? The assignment for the dude that just had a baby and is caring for his wife who's going through postpartum depression. That assignment is way different than someone like me, who my youngest is 3, my oldest is 9, my wife is great, we're in a good shape, right? That assignment is different based on the season that we're in. And so those are some of the concepts I'm exploring in the book. But then there's the first half of it, which is more like ideology, mindset, but then the second half of it, we're really getting into implementation. So how do you then get into a place of moving from, hey, I'm dysfunctional in my thinking, I'm dysfunctional in my behavior, I have these habits, I have these addictions, I have these idiosyncrasies that are not helpful. How do I go from being dysfunctional and not just go from dysfunctional to flourishing? Because that's what most people want to do. Like, I'm a mess, I'm a jacked up. Like, for us, it was like when I grew up, like, oh man, I'm a poor kid and I want to be an athlete or a rapper, right? And you're not skipping that and going, I'm dysfunctional to now I want to be flourishing. But how do I go from dysfunctional to functional to flourishing? How do I go from I'm jacked up, let me work on these issues that I have and become a more functional human, so that way when I become flourishing, whether it's financially, with family, relationally, in business, I'm actually equipped to handle it, steward it well, right? Because all these things, money, success, fame, whatever, they just reveal who you really are. If you're a scumbag when you're poor, you're going to be a scumbag when you're rich.
It's an amplifier.
Yeah, it's just an amplifier. And so I'm really trying to explore those and then lay out like a linear system for people, because I've been so impacted by Dave Ramsey and his like 7 baby steps, right? Which I think are great for 99% of people. I'm trying to figure out, like, how can we lay this out in a linear fashion for people that are like, I think I want to do something big with my life, but I feel this conflict and this tension within myself. And it's like, how do we work through that and flesh it out in a healthy way, both theologically, scripturally, and in a practical way?
That's dope, man. I look forward to listening.
Listen, you can listen. There'll be an audiobook.
Yeah, okay. Can you make me a promise?
Sure.
You have to narrate it yourself.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a non-negotiable.
I can't.
I
get so upset.
I get upset too,
when
bro.
people I know write books.
Yeah.
And then they get another person in it. I'm like, no,
It's
you
the
have
worst.
to narrate it yourself.
Yeah, one of the best, not to derail the conversation, but it's actually one of my inspirations for the book. The book will be a cross of Atomic Habits, Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life.
Okay.
And hopefully, I don't know if I could pull this off, but like the storytelling of Kevin Hart's book, Kevin Hart's audio book.
I
can't make this up.
Yeah.
Bro, the audio book was phenomenal.
Yep.
Like, because he's reading, but then he'll stop and riff in the middle of it. And it was really funny. And he told these stories that then would have these practical business implications that was like, yo, this is really good. Like, he talks about how he started and how he got popping into local clubs and they collected emails and then they leveraged social media and then they got in a bigger club, right? And he just like lays out the business plan while telling you really funny stories about his life. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want to capture narrative, but also give people implementation.
Awesome, man.
So yes, I will narrate it myself.
Ruslan, appreciate it, bro.
Thank you,
so
brother.
much for your time, man.
This was great, man.